And for
Okay.
us, the important track is Polkadot, because they
Okay.
are, we believe that Polkadot is a very good blockchain protocol stack, and we want to
Right.
encourage as many participants to work on Polkadot. And in that
Mhm.
context, one of the requests that we got from students and colleges and developers is that, well, we are interested in working on Polkadot, but we need a little help and support in terms of understanding Polkadot, or in terms of having a hands-on understanding of Polkadot. And
Yeah.
in that context, Polkadot itself has conducted a few workshops which have been
Mhm.
received very well, but they
Okay.
have been shorter in version. And
Mhm.
this initiative that we are starting today is to kind of go deeper into it, so that people get enough confidence to start
Right.
working on Polkadot. Because I think the feedback that we have received is there's a general appreciation of Polkadot, but
Mhm.
there is a little bit of challenge in terms of the hands-on programming exposure kind of a thing. So I think that's the
Right.
context. Praveen, do you want to add something?
No, I think we are pretty much covered, Silva. So, as you know, Polkadot has pretty interesting offerings, and with respect to several key challenges that this industry is facing today.
Mhm.
So, now we are building a community of Polkadot developers, and in that process, what you are going to be covering here will be extremely important. And
Right.
the participants who are participating in this series of I would say the talks from you, they will be
Mhm.
advantaged by getting in-depth knowledge, and I am hoping that they would be also able to experience some of things that we talk about, so
True.
that
True.
they would be able to build solutions on that. And Pankaj and I,
Mhm.
we have got some other plans as well to introduce them to the business functions and all that. But then I
Mhm.
think from your sessions, I am pretty sure that people would be able to appreciate this ecosystem to a much more deeper level. So I mean
Right.
that's
Right.
Right, right. So, Praveen, if you're okay, I can quickly,
Mhm.
briefly set the context for the audience also, and
yeah,
then probably you can add a few points, and then we'll hand it over to Selva.
sure.
Right. So, thank you everyone for joining. I know it's a working day, it's Monday, and for all of you to join at 6 o'clock in large numbers is a very good sign, and a testimony of the kind of interest all of you have in this particular workshop and program. The only point that I want to kind of highlight here is there are two ways of learning technology. One is the classical way, which we learn in school and college, which is we have a 6 months semester duration for learning things. A lot of times after the semester gets over, people write the exams but still don't learn the subject. And there's another way, and that another way is to go top down. Have the confidence that in the next 3 days or next 7 days, I am going to build an application on Polkadot, and then work backwards towards that. I think to that extent, recently Elon Musk also made some tweet, or said that depending on the time you have on hand, you will consume that. So I just want all of you to have that faith. If we are doing it for 6 hours, that is Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 2 hours each, we have thought through it and start on this journey. Whatever support is required beyond these 6 hours, beyond these three workshops, will also be given, and whatever is required will be supported. But I think we definitely want to invest this time in people who are committed to taking this forward. That is the only expectation that we have. Feel free to ask questions. I know this group is a combination of developers, entrepreneurs, students, and seeing some of the names which I recognize. I see people all the way from IIT Jammu and Kashmir to Tamil Nadu and Kerala. So I'm very glad that all of you have joined. Thank you so much for that. But I think that's the limited expectation that we have, that you're going to make use of this and participate and try to build things on Polkadot. And then whatever support is required will be given on a continuous basis. So that's the only thing I wanted to mention here. Over to you, Praveen.
Yeah, thank you, Pankaj. So I'll take few minutes to give some context and a background of why we are doing this. Many of you here would be aware of the blockchain ecosystem, blockchain world, and a lot of things have been happening in this space for, I would say, over 10 plus years. And if you really go and look at last 5 to 6 years, amazing things really have happened in this space. Now, these amazing things could be in the form of coming up with several new solutions, several new propositions in terms of newer blockchains, layer ones. There have been a lot of work happening in the layer 2 space where people are still using the security protocols of the layer 1, but trying to do things in such a way, such as the gas cost gets reduced, the time to finality gets reduced. A lot of things are happening. But in the whole process, what really has happened, that plethora of new languages have come into picture, which are pretty important, from the ecosystem development perspective, because unless you know these languages, you will not be able to contribute to the ecosystem. Now, other than that, what also has happened, that this technology has really gone into several directions, and these directions are have they started touching our real world lives, such as these could be DeFi, these could be accessing the financial world, these could be accessing the real world assets in terms of NFTs. These could be giving you a completely new world of experience in metaverses, and there are many more usages which are enterprise level usages. There are the social level in applications. So what I'm trying to tell you, that now the people who are participating in today's session and a few more sessions, I would say that we are going to be giving you an in-depth perspective of why are these things happening, and especially going deeper into Polkadot. Polkadot is one of such innovative solutions, which is founded by Gavin Wood, who himself was the founder and CTO, co-founder and CTO of Ethereum. So you understand the context that he brings from the first programmable blockchain that the whole world is talking about today. So if you really look at Polkadot, they give you plenty of things. I'm sure our expert Selva will really go into much more detail. But my request to you is that IBC Media, and I'll take 30 more seconds on IBC Media. IBC Media has been putting a lot of effort in this direction, which equips people to come forward and participate in these all innovative solutions and ecosystems. Now we have onto a journey of maturing this ecosystem, solving some of the problems that most of these chains are facing today in terms of building a developer community. There are people, but there are people who are disconnected from learning all these newer technologies. So we are into onto a mission to achieve and to fulfill many of these things over next few years. Now, as part of that process, we have, and please visit our website ibc.media. You will get to know several things which we are trying to do. Abhishek Pitti and the whole team is trying to do several things here. We have a program called IBC Hack. So IBC Hack is a series of programs in which you are trying to solve problems across multiple blockchains. Now, Polkadot being our headline sponsor, of course, there are solutions to that which we are spending time today, but there are other areas as well. Similar to that, we have other program which is called IBC Emerge. Now, IBC Emerge is the program which which is kind of promoting and which is encouraging the startups to flourish in this world. So basically, if you really see, I will not consume a lot of time from Selva here, but one thing I want to give you a message that please join our Discord channel. Please follow us on our social media, Twitter and others. We have got a YouTube channel, IBC Media. Go and whatever sessions we do, we go and create and store them in our YouTube channel so that you can go and access them, benefit from them, and be a part of this ecosystem. So guys, I think before I hand it over to Selva, I will say that these sessions are going to be very, very informative. And I promise to you that if you are, giving your focus and attention on these activities, I am pretty sure that you will be directly getting admission into this blockchain world, which is going to be fantastic. So happy learning, and I think all the very best. Pankaj?
No, I think both of us are fond of talking, and we can go on and on, but we'll hand over the session to Selva Raju. But just one point on what Praveen said. the story begins here. It doesn't end here. So don't worry about are these sessions enough, not enough, because the support is going to continue, right? So please ensure that you're making use of this opportunity and learning a new protocol stack, Polkadot, which is very important, and get an opportunity to get networking with the world's who's who. Because if you go through the website, you will realize that there are a whole lot of international mentors, there are a whole lot of international companies which are backing, and this is only increasing by the day. So that's all I want to mention here. And over to you, Selva.
Thank you, Pankaj. Thank you, Praveen. So, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. So, for now, we have planned Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Am I right, Pankaj? So, today's session will be a very generic discussion on the Polkadot and its ecosystem and all those things. And going forward on Wednesday session, you will see introduction to Substrate, how we can make use of it to build custom blockchain. And I'll be walking you through all of that. So that's something. And on Friday, we will have an extended session wherein we'll continue with the development of blockchain. And we'll also discuss how you can think about building your own customized blockchain for a specific domain of applications and how Substrate can be used for that purpose. Okay. And after that also, anytime you have a need or you need any support from our side, so we'll be open to that. So please feel free to ask as many number of questions as is possible, because you don't even have to wait for me to finish a sentence. I can pick up from where I left. Okay, but it's important that your queries must be answered. So don't wait for for me to finish something and then you ask me the question. You can have the question interspersed, Q&A interspersed throughout the discussion. So so today's session is more of the ecosystem discussion, what Polkadot brings to the table. I know some of you might have already read about that, but this is for the general audience in here. Okay. So let us start. So first off, I would like to know how many of you are actually aware of blockchain. Okay, so you can just use the chat function to let me. Because most of the times what happens is when you talk of blockchain, any novice person, when they think of blockchain, the first thing that comes to their mind is Bitcoin, right? So I think it has kind of become synonymous to blockchain. But what you have to understand is Bitcoin is actually the application which is making use of the underlying technology, which is actually the blockchain, right? So, so first off, let me explain, a bit of the history. Okay, so if you look at, the historical development of how these networks have come over time, to say right from the so-called ARPANET, and then followed by you had what to say disparate networks across different universities, and ultimately they came together and made communication possible across networks. And then it developed into a protocol stack, but wherein they adopted the TCP/IP protocol. And finally, you saw the whole development of internet as such. Okay, and yes, yeah, we can talk about the development of HTML by Tim Berners-Lee, followed by Tim Berners-Lee. If you look at it, primarily he developed HTML only as a mechanism to share information between scientific community. And now this has become the driving force. Now HTML is no longer just a markup language. It's actually developed into a whole platform wherein you can actually develop applications using HTML, right? So to that extent, the development has taken place, and then followed by Web 1.0, then Web 2.0 and 3.0, and so on and so forth. So there is a constant endeavor across the entire IT industry, where we are actually developing all kinds of innovative solutions to problems that are faced on a day-to-day basis. but when it comes to blockchain, again, remember one of the most important things about blockchain. If you're a novice, do not equate blockchain with cryptocurrencies. Okay, cryptocurrency is just one single application which has been developed on top of blockchain as a technology. So if you look at a blockchain, what exactly is a blockchain? It is simply, you can think of it as a data structure wherein the activities, so-called as transactions, as we say, okay, they are recorded in an immutable fashion. Okay, so when you say immutability, the whole structure has been designed in such a way that once something is recorded on the blockchain, you cannot make changes to it. Okay, so it becomes permanent record of whatever has been done. So if you look at it from a financial standpoint, you can think of it as a record of all the transactions that have taken place, financial transactions. Like for instance, somebody sending money from account A to account B, or person A sending some amount of money to person B, and so on and so forth. Okay. But these are designed in such a fashion that once these transactions have been recorded, they become permanent. You cannot tamper with them. And that is where the whole security of the blockchain actually comes into it. Now, so when it started, so if you think of it, when Bitcoin started, it was purely meant for recording transaction of digital currency being moved across people and accounts. That's it. Nothing beyond that. So it was using blockchain as a record of all the transactions happening. And for a period of time, what has happened is, so what happens is, first and foremost, once you think of a blockchain, is that, say, for instance, if I have a transaction to be recorded, okay, how do you go about it? So one of the things is, we are now slowly moving away from a centralized, storage to decentralized one, which makes it even more secure. Say, for instance, if you take, say, any major, organization, let's say you have an organization XYZ that actually has a social networking platform, and it puts all its data onto its servers. If those servers go down, okay, the entire platform goes down, right? With a distributed network, what happens is that the data is not held by just one single set of servers, but instead it is actually distributed across the entire network in a distributed fashion, wherein copy of the data is maintained by each and every participating node. So even if some nodes go down, the data is still available in other nodes. Of course, yes. So that way, this whole security and immutability of data comes in. The data is always available. Okay, it's close to 100%, of course, except when you have an extinction level event. So you can't do anything about that. So other than that, you can see that if you have a distributed network which is maintaining the copies, the data. So even if the entire network goes on and just one single node is still working, your network is still working. That is the power of distributed data storage. So what goes on in here is that we are trying to build a system which spans across the globe in such a fashion that the data is always available. It's always available. Now, data availability is one issue. Second thing is the data security. So you need principles to be applied so that the data can be secured in a fashion that is agreeable upon by all the participating parties. Okay, that's another thing. Now, when it comes to recording the transit, yeah.
Are you sharing something on the screen?
Wait a second.
I mean, we are not able to see the screen, so I'm just checking with you. Are you sharing something on the screen?
Wait. Do you see that?
Okay. So earlier it was not visible.
Yeah. It was
I would request the participants to feel free to,
yeah. Please let me know.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, so what has happened is that from Bitcoin we went on to Ethereum, which became a programmable, blockchain wherein you could actually store code and then run what we call as smart contracts. And over a period of time, in the past decade or so, a lot of different blockchains with their own specific applications have come up, right? So what has happened is these are all disparate blockchain networks, and there is these don't communicate well. These don't communicate well. Okay. So, for instance, if I were to transfer, let's say, Bitcoin onto the Ethereum network, okay, by making Bitcoin and Ethereum work together, as of now, there are very limited solutions available. Okay, so when you want to, transfer native tokens from one blockchain to another blockchain, it's a humongous effort, and most of the times, there are very limited solutions available for you to do so. That is where actually Polkadot comes into play. Okay, now today's discussion will be around Polkadot and its ecosystem, and on Wednesday we will actually see how we can actually develop using the Polkadot ecosystem tools and frameworks available, right? So what does Polkadot bring to the table? So essentially, Gavin Wood is the one who's driving this project, and in fact, he was, as was mentioned by Praveen also, he was the CTO and also co-founding member of Ethereum, right? So he brings that domain expertise in building this Polkadot network. Okay, and this is a typical, what to say, a diagram that they show in their white papers. Okay, so it's been picked up from the Gavin Wood's white paper only. Okay, so there are a lot of moving parts, and we have to see how it solves the fundamental problem of connecting disparate, blockchains. Now, you have layer 0, then layer 1, protocols available in order to run this interoperability. But then there are limitations with that. Okay, so essentially, one of the chief driving force has been for coming up with layer 1, networks like Polygon and all that, is to bring down the gas cost and increase the the transaction rates. Okay, so for instance, if you see Bitcoin, it does around 7 transactions per second max, and Ethereum goes on to do something like 15 or so. Okay, so the solutions like Polygon and Bitcoin, they are trying to bring down the gas cost fees, because what happens is, think of a scenario where I want to exchange, say, let's say I want to buy a certain currency. I'm talking about fiat currency in the real world. Okay, so let's say if for buying $100, if I have to pay a fees of $20, I mean 1/5 of the amount is gone, right? So it doesn't make economic sense to actually, do an exchange of this this sort of what to say, exchanges of fiat currency. In fact, I'll tell you, when you go to a foreign exchange and then you buy the let's say US dollar, okay, you buy for 100 rupees, you get some dollars, and then you sell them off, you get lesser dollars, and when you do these transactions, multiple number of times, the amount of money in your hand will become zero, and everything you have paid it is in the form of the the exchange commissions. So, which is what we call it as kind of gas cost on the Ethereum network, right? Think of it like this. So, because of the way the Ethereum network has been designed, okay, it's getting more and more difficult, okay, to mine the new blocks, and then so there's heavy amount of gas fees involved, simply because there's a sudden plethora of so many DeFi applications running on Ethereum that it's not able to scale to the demand that is actually needed. Okay, so not to mention the number of transactions is lower, and the gas gas fees are higher. Okay, so now we all know that they are moving from proof of work to proof of stake, wherein the transaction speeds will increase. Okay, and also it will become a bit viable. But see what happens when you go for a blockchain. Okay, so when you want to change over the consensus mechanism on the blockchain, what happens is you have to essentially redo the entire thing. It's called as a hard fork. Hard fork is not an easy endeavor to carry out because there are so many moving parts within your blockchain that it will become kind of a humongous effort. Not that it is impossible. So Ethereum is actually now coming up with the proof of stake, consensus, and they are going to use that so that the transactions become faster and the gas fees also comes down. So likewise, there are so many blockchains specifically built, okay, for specific domain of applications. What Polkadot brings to the table is integration of all these together so that you could make these disparate blockchains to talk to each other. That is the whole what to say idea of Polkadot. So it actually what it does is it has come up with an architecture which allows completely disparate networks like Bitcoin or the Bitcoin or Ethereum to talk to each other and be able to do native token transfers as well. So that is actually really the ultimate goal where you'll be able to do that. Okay. So you have multiple blockchains. All these blockchains have their own native token, and what Polkadot tries to do is that you should be able to not only be able to bridge these networks, but also be able to do transactions across these networks, and also be able to transfer the native tokens across the table. That's what this whole Polkadot vision is. So essentially, they say less trust, more truth. Okay, because these different blockchains, they have to talk to each other. Okay, so in a completely trustless manner. So what happens is that when you interact with technology which is controlled by a handful of large companies, what happens is their interests and incentives will often conflict with yours, right? So what happens is if you want the benefit of using their proprietary apps, then you are forced to agree to their terms. In fact, you take any software and then you install it. It actually comes up with a big, what to say, terms. Okay, terms and conditions. But do we really even care to read the entire legal document? No, nobody does that. In fact, even I don't do that. Okay, so we just end up, accepting the license agreement and going ahead with that. So essentially, legally, what you're doing is, without even looking into what that agreement says, you are agreeing to the agreement without even, looking at the agreement. And so what happens is you are essentially giving control to the other party. Okay, so after that, if suppose a data leak happens, you have no control over that, and because you already legally you have accepted the terms and agreement. Okay, so because of that, data can often, it can actually paint detailed picture of your personal life. Okay, and so what has happened is it has become a resource more valuable than gold and oil. Okay, and what we are doing is we are giving it up for free, right? With no choice but to trust that it won't be, lost or stolen or misused. Okay, so actually, if you see the blockchain, domain as on today, in its current form, it's not really ready to break the corporate stranglehold. Okay, on the web just yet. It still needs to, go further ahead. Okay, but despite the promise and the progress we made, okay, we're yet to see significant real world deployment of this technology, right? So what Polkadot does, okay, so it's a next generation blockchain protocol that will unite that actually aims to unite, purpose-built blockchains Okay, and in such a manner that they can seamlessly integrate, and then they can scale together at scale. Okay, so no matter what type of blockchain it is, it could be an NFT blockchain, it could be a proprietary token blockchain, or it could even be a programmable blockchain like Ethereum. All these, okay, should be able to integrate, and they should be able to talk to each other. Because you see, what has happened is over a period of time, blockchain has been used in a variety of domains. Like for instance, IoT, they are separate blockchains. Okay, you have finance blockchains, you have governance blockchains, you have identity management, and then web decentralization, and so on and so forth. Okay, so all of these, they can be built together within Polkadot. Okay, so all the design limitation that we see in proprietary blockchain, that is what we're actually trying to break free out of that. Okay, so you can actually build specialized blockchains, and Polkadot can actually integrate them in a newly decentralized marketplace. Okay, so what happens is that actually Polkadot brings a lot of think of it like this. Every blockchain requires certain bits and pieces. Like for instance, it could be a consensus algorithm, it could be a data layer, it could be a governance layer, and so on and so forth. So this many of the common things are provided by Polkadot itself. So that what happens is that tomorrow when you want to bring your blockchain connect to that, you don't need to bring in these features, and they can be taken from the Polkadot network itself. So that makes the design of your purpose-built blockchain pretty easy. Okay, so that's what they call it as. This is the blockchain unbounded. Okay, so basically. It uses heterogeneous sharding. Sharding simply, means that you are essentially breaking the whole data storage into bits and pieces. Okay, so that it can be easily scaled up. And one of the important things is it allows you to scale it up. You have upgradability. So in fact, we have 4 free upgrades available in Polkadot. Okay, which is completely different from what we see in traditional blockchain when you want to do, say, for instance, like what is happening with Ethereum. So Ethereum 2.0 is basically a hard fork. So what happens is there will be a part of the old chain, and there will be a new chain starting from certain block, right? That can create a certain amount of, complexity of management. Okay, so here what happens is Polkadot actually brings, essentially dynamic upgrades to the network, which is completely fork free. Okay, without doing a hard fork, you can do that. Okay, it also brings transparent governance because it's completely a democratic, what to say, ecosystem. So the participants will actually conduct a referendum to carry out the governance and also the cross-chain composability, which allows you to basically connect multiple blockchains together. Okay. So heterogeneous sharding. So you have many chains and you have one network. Okay. So essentially what is happening is that if you see the complete blockchain, okay, on the Polkadot network, okay, I will actually show you the architecture also a little later. But if you see this, see, this is the centralized ring sort of a thing that you see here. This is called as the relay chain. Okay, and all the other chains are actually connecting to it. Okay, and I'll explain in detail what these moving parts are. So essentially, you have one network which is maintaining data in a sharded fashion. So it becomes a blockchain of blockchains. Right? So what happens in every individual blockchain which is connecting to the Polkadot network, okay, is one shard. Okay, so it maintains its own its own data. So therefore, we say that it's actually a sharded network, sharded blockchain. Okay. Okay. So connects all these chains together. We call these as chains, okay, blockchains, okay, into one single network. And it allows them to process the transactions, okay, in parallel. So basically what happens is these are all the individual chains which are connected. They can all do their own transactions, okay, in parallel, okay. So therefore you can get a very high throughput in terms of the transactions being processed per second. And a theoretical estimate which has already been given is almost 166,666, if I remember the number right. Okay, so 1,66,660 transactions per second. That is the kind of speed you can actually achieve with the parallelization of the processing of all the transactions that are happening over the network. Okay, so it has got a sharding model, and each chain on the network, it can be optimized for its own specific use case. So you don't actually try to build one blockchain as one size fits all. Instead, you let all these specialized blockchains to connect together into one single ecosystem, right? And it allows scalability. So essentially, what it does, what Polkadot does is that when you're connecting all these chains together, okay, so it will allow you to do processing faster in a parallel fashion. And so what happens is the transaction processing can be actually delegated to the Polkadot network rather than doing it in your network itself. Thereby, you can have your network free to do more number of transactions per second, and the Polkadot's relay chain will actually take care of all the parallel transactions that are happening. Okay, so thereby you have better scalability. So the blockchain actually grows, right? Then forkless upgrades. This is one of the USPs of Polkadot. Okay, that is you have future-proof. You can future-proof blockchain with forkless upgrades. What forkless upgrades is? Think of it like this. So maybe I'll just give you a simple idea of this. I'll just use Paint to do that. So you know that you have this blockchain. So I have one block. Okay? This is the Genesis block, and let's say another block. You have to excuse me for my drawing skills. Actually, I'm not using a graphics tablet right now. Okay, and so you have. So this is the Genesis block. Okay. So maybe that's a Genesis block, and every block has a reference to its previous block. So you have this block referring to this. It's essentially, if you're from computer science background, it's nothing but a linked list, plain and simple. Okay. And of course, we are using cryptographic hashes to connect them together. So let's say this is our Genesis block. Let's call it as block 0. And this is our block 1. This is block 2, 3, and so on. Right? Now, at some point in time, what has happened is that you want to essentially, modify, let's say, the blockchain architecture itself. So let's say I have another block in here. Maybe I should have used this. So I just use plain lines to connect them together. So that's block 4 for you. Okay. So at some point in time, I want to break it and create a new block. Okay. So what happens is, what hard fork does is, and if you see with hard fork, we do it like this. So let's say for the hard fork, I'm using rounded rectangles. And I have okay. So now what has happened is, we have a hard fork in there. And now what has happened is, now you have new block. Okay. And so essentially you are having newer and newer data. I can call it as new data. And so the old blocks, this part that you see there, so this part that you see there, it is still having the old data. Okay. This is all old data. And all these are having new data. Okay. So the newer applications are using the fork, and the older applications are still using. So this is all old data there. And these ones are having new data. Now, this is hard fork. Okay. So when you do a hard fork like this, what happens is, now you need to manage the old data as well as the new data. And this can create all kinds of management issues. Not to mention, your old blockchain might be using a different consensus algorithm than the newer one. Okay, so it creates a mishmash of these blockchains, and then the block validity and its finality. All these problems, actually they crop up suddenly because of this hard fork. Now, so what Polkadot does is something different. So what Polkadot does is like this. So in Polkadot, if you want to do an upgrade, so the middle one, I have actually deliberately made it a little bigger. And let's say this is my Genesis block. And let's say this is my version 1, and the block number is 0. This is version 1, and the block number is 2. So 1. Block number 2, and so. And yes, all these are connected together. And now what happens? This is our focus upgrade. Okay. And this is block number 3. Okay. You can call it version 1 itself, and then followed by version 2, block number 4, version 2, block number 5. So in a forkless upgrade, what happens is essentially there is one more block. Okay, so if you see this particular block, okay, if you see this, how it is done is that basically this is again, it's actually recorded. The beauty of this architecture is, okay, the upgrade is recorded as a transaction. Okay, so the upgrade to the runtime environment. Let's say I make some changes to the runtime environment, or I make changes to the let's say consensus algorithm, or some governance algorithm. So that upgrade is actually recorded as a transaction within the old network. Okay, and then after that, the newer blocks will be having the newer runtime, or the newer let's say consensus algorithm, or newer governance blocks. This is the beauty of forkless upgrades. Okay, so this is what Polkadot actually tries to bring in, so that the upgrades to the network are seamless. Okay, this is called as forkless upgrade. If you have any question, please let me know at this stage. Any questions, please? I would appreciate if you could ask some questions if you have any doubts. Okay, so I will continue. Oh yeah, Ritesh, you raised a hand, right? If you have any question. Ritesh, can you use your mic to talk to me? Okay. Sure. Yeah, Ritesh, so you can ask your question in the chat box. You see you raised your hand. And Bhuvan has raised a hand. And I see Sharwari Patel. You can put up your questions in the chat box, please. Ritesh, Bhuvan, Sharwari. Chat disabled. Okay.
Yeah, hi. Actually, the chat was disabled.
Okay.
Yeah. So my first question is regarding the blockchain that you are showing on the screen. So
Hmm.
this forkless upgrade that is happening. So that
Hmm.
is happening on Polkadot, or it is happening on any of the connected blockchains that are part of the ecosystem.
Okay. So if you are building, see, Polkadot actually brings with it a complete development framework for building your own blockchain for any purpose. Okay. When you're using their, framework, that is, so uh, we will see Substrate as the framework that actually allows you to do forkless upgrades. Okay, now you cannot do forkless upgrades in Bitcoin or Ethereum. Okay, because
Mhm.
they've already been designed as proprietary networks with their own architecture. You can't do that. So they will have to resort to hard forks only. So whereas if you are building using Substrate, your own blockchain, which is what is going to be the topic of next session, wherein you will see how I can actually build a blockchain myself. Okay, so their Substrate allows you to do forkless upgrades. So you have to use a framework that actually allows you to do forkless upgrades. And Polkadot's development framework, which is Substrate, allows you to do it. So the
Okay.
existing networks which are already using proprietary, say architectures, they may not be able to support the forkless upgrades. In fact, that is what is happening to Ethereum. Okay, so Ethereum is going to do a hard fork only. They cannot do a forkless upgrade at all.
Okay. So if this feature would have been available, then this entire thing of the movement of POS to POS, proof of work to POS would have been easier. You mean to say?
Exactly, extremely easy. It would
Okay.
have been just see. So what happens? So the way this new framework has been designed is such that if I make some changes to the runtime environment, or say I add some new feature to it, that feature upgrade is actually added as a transaction, and then the following blocks will always use the updated version of the runtime, or the feature set added into it. So that allows you to do all of this, and there is no data loss because the feature upgrade itself is just a transaction on top of the network.
Okay. So we can create our own blockchain using the Polkadot
Yes,
ecosystem, and
exactly.
on
That is
that
what
we
I'm going.
can.
Yes,
So
that's exactly what I'm going to teach you in the next session on Wednesday.
sure, sure. Yeah, this was helpful. Thank you.
Okay. Any other question, please? If you can unmute yourself and then you can actually speak to me.
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Actually, my doubt is like, whenever they store the data into the blockchain, right?
So,
So,
yeah.
is there any way to like to just see in which block we have just saved the data into?
Yeah, you have these all these block scanners available, which allow you to transparently see what is the data going in into the blocks, and what is the block timestamp and all those things. Yes, you can do that. Like for instance, for Ethereum, you have ETH scan, so you can use BSC scan for Binance network and so on and so forth. So the scanners are available, which allow you to scan through the blocks and then see what is the data there.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Welcome. So you will have such tools already built with the Polkadot also. They are actually available, in fact. So you can do a block scan, and from there you can get all the information about the blocks, how many blocks are there, at what time the block was created, what transactions have been recorded in the block. Because it has to be a transparent one, because it is a completely trustless, environment. So that transparency has to be there. But of course, there is also another concept wherein you are having private blockchain networks as well, where you can see the blocks, but you don't really know exactly what transactions have been recorded beyond a certain level. That is maintained particularly with private blockchain networks, which basically deal with proprietary tokens. So what happens is, uh, if it's an open source, open blockchain, then getting into a transaction, you can actually see who transferred what amount of money to whom, and at the same time, you can look into their wallet balances. But so this is something that you would not want. So there are private blockchains which allow you to see the transaction, but only to a certain level. You can't see the actual wallet balances of the individual parties involved in a transaction, but you will only be able to see that, okay, a person X sent some amount to person Y. That's it. Like that. So you can actually build your own, a blockchain which is private and in actually allowing you to see the block, but not the transactions inside of it. So you can design it like that. And in fact, there are such private blockchains, a lot of them, particularly those which actually deal with tokens, their own proprietary tokens.
Yeah, and like Silva mentioned, if you really look at the use cases, so the use cases are primarily, say for example, you are a consortium and 5 banks come together, and they want to have transactions between the banks, across the banks, and those transactions should not be visible to outside.
Should not be visible.
Yeah.
So also the way it is handled is, like, say for instance, if we are having a bank as a smart contract, you would want to see only, you should be able to see only those that you have performed with the bank, but not anybody else's. So there are various levels of privacy that you need to build according to the application you're trying to build on top of the.
What?
So
Your
if it's a
avatar.
consortium of banks, obviously,
See, you're the one on top.
You should not be able
Push
to
the
see
joystick.
what the transactions across the banks which is happening.
You missed.
Marissa, I don't want to do
Okay.
this right now.
So,
Yes, you do.
Sharvari,
No,
part
I'm gonna
you're
shoot at you.
asking where the old data
you
will
better
be
fight or
stored
I'll
in
kill
case
you.
of Polkadot Substrate. It is still on the same chain. There's nothing. There is just one more block which allows you to change or add a transaction for the upgrade. That's it. The data is still on the chain. So the data is not going anywhere. So you have to think of it like this, okay? When you think of a blockchain like Bitcoin, it is pure, blocks contain only the transactions. But if it is Ethereum, then in that case, what happens is when you deploy a smart contract, that's again a transaction. A deployment of smart contract is a transaction, right? So that code upload into the chain is also a transaction. So likewise, in a forkless upgrade, the upgrade is again a transaction, which when applied, upgrades your runtime environment or whatever that you are actually implementing. And then the following blocks will all use that runtime environment or the upgraded version of the infrastructure that you built. Arvind Reddy, so you're asking, is it Polkadot is upgrade or alternative to Ethereum? Okay, understand this. The whole point behind Polkadot is not to replace anything. Okay, it is meant to essentially integrate them together and be able to do transactions across. Okay, so it's not an upgrade and it is not an alternative wisdom. It is basically, think of it like this. We are creating a new infrastructure so that Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, Binance Smart Chain, all these can connect together and be able to, talk to each other. Yeah, Bhuvan, I can see, and you raised a hand. Bhuvan, your question, please. So it's not coming up as an upgrade or an alternative. It is providing you with a new infrastructure that allows these disparate blockchains to talk to each other, which currently are very limited in terms of the solution. Like for instance, Cosmos does it, but the problem with Cosmos, there's a Cosmos which allows you to essentially connect multiple blockchains. But the problem is the governance and security and all those consensus, everything is handled by the individual blockchains. Whereas these kind of things, Polkadot addresses by providing a common set of, management. Okay, what is the business use case of individual blockchains that can be created on Polkadot? Are these like enterprise blockchains talking to each other? Yes. Yes, Ritesh. That is the common goal. So you have, let's say, for instance, your organization has built two different blockchains. Okay, one purely for some sort of an internal token, right? And another blockchain which allows, let's say, for internal social media networking. You want these tokens to be available in that media network also, so that the people or the employees can actually exchange tokens. So instead of merging together, you can connect them over the Polkadot chain, and you will be able to exchange data. Okay, Bharat, you're asking how the data is stored in blockchains, like in the nodes, or is there any storage system for storing the data? See, ultimately, there is a persistent store, okay, like hard disk or SSD drives where it will be stored. The entire blockchain will be stored, but these nodes maintain it in memory for the purpose of efficiency, for speed, okay? Right. So, and also different blockchains have their own, design for the blocks themselves. So you're free to design your block the way you want it. If you want additional info, I'll just point you out to the right resource. Okay. Okay. So a couple of things you should really know if you want to take your understanding to the next level. Okay. So if you see, you just go to the Wikipedia, there is an entire page on blockchain. Absolutely nice read, very easy to use, very easy to read. Okay. It talks about the history and the structure and design and networking, the consensus. So do read upon this consensus, like the proof of work, proof of stake, what does it mean? Okay, how the blocks are done. And more importantly, if you want to get into a little bit of more technical stuff, there is a whole discussion on Merkle trees. Okay, read upon this. Okay, how the blocks are maintained, how the hashes are generated, how these connect together. Okay, so it's actually a fantastic read. How it will tell you exactly how this Merkle tree is used to validate the blocks, so that so the block that is being added to the chain is not an invalid block. Okay. And of course, there is the consensus like proof of work and proof of stake. Okay. And on the networking side, you will need some sort of discovery mechanism, propagation, verification. Okay. And then smart contracts and decentralized applications and so on. So I'll just take this. So basically, if you read these, you'll get a lot of information from this. So I'll just put it in the chat window for you guys. Merkle tree is more technical stuff, how the blocks are actually organized in a tree fashion, how the hashes are connected together, and that actually tells you how the blocks are actually generated and so on and so forth. Okay. And you can also see the block, see all about blocks and also the hard forks. Okay. So it talks about this. So now what is happening is, now you have Ethereum and Ethereum Classic. Ethereum Classic is the older one, which uses proof of work. Okay, and Ethereum will be the newer Ethereum with proof of stake. Okay, Arvind Reddy, you're asking. Okay, so just a minute. What is Polkadot POC update? Was even sorry. Polkadot POC2 update. Yeah, you have to go to the Polkadot's website to see the POC update. And Arvind, you're asking, Polkadot have more chain of blockchains, but why we have only one Polkadot currency in market? Polkadot ecosystem is okay. It's not proof of work. It uses proof of stake. So when you want to stake, you need to have a native coin. That's why the Polkadot uses the dot coin for staking. Okay, so if you want to be a validator or a collator, you have to stake, dot coins. Then only you'll be able to participate in that. Okay, so so it is proof of stake. It's not proof of work. Okay, we have seen the downsides of proof of work from Bitcoin. So we have learned from that. We have learned a lesson from that, and the newer networks are going to be proof of stake, so and proof of authority, and there are other consensus mechanisms also coming up.
So Silva, so I think one question I want to take from the
Sure.
group. So
Yeah.
Wajid is asking the question about the
Yeah.
Polkadot POC2 update. So Wajid, so what happened that there were many new features that Polkadot implemented in POC2, and they first made it available into their testnet, such as parachains, like Silva was mentioning earlier. These parachains are basically independent networks, and these parachains have their own mechanism, like Silva mentioned, and also they could leverage the relay chains mechanisms also. Now the question is that once you have these nodes, all these nodes are required to stake their rewards, and if they are behaving within the rules, then they get staking rewards. But if, say, for example, some node is trying to behave weirdly, then they get penalty also. Okay, they
Exactly.
in blockchain term we call flashing. Okay, so that was something which they implemented. And then there was another thing which is very important, which I'm sure Silva will cover, but then I'll just touch upon this here. Like, we have got something called lib P2P. Now this lib P2P is basically a mechanism in which what happens that say an outside request we call JSON RPC. I mean, that's the way these blockchains are accessed from outside the blockchain, and the request comes to one node. Okay, now since one node has to take this information to other nodes, right? All nodes have to get the same information at some point in time with respect to the state of the blockchain or the request incoming. I mean, all those things. So this lib P2P is a mechanism in which the different nodes interact with each other. Okay, now that's something which is very, very fundamental to blockchain, which we call gossip protocol. I mean, that's how, I mean, there are different ways in which you can do that. So, I mean, all these features were, implemented, and that's what, I mean, they just named it POC2 update. I think there's nothing fancy about it.
Yeah.
And while I'm just talking, I'll just take 30 more seconds. Like Bhuvan asked about, can these networks talk to each other? Absolutely. And that's what Silva has been stressing upon so far, that there are two parachains. Okay, now one parachain may be hosting some business function, and the other parachain is hosting some other business function. I mean, two networks. Now there is a mechanism for these two, applications or dApps we call, to interact with each other. Now what Polkadot has done, they have created a mechanism which is called cross consensus mechanism, XCM, and you can read about that. I mean, there are a lot of materials available on
cross-chain messaging, which allows them
messaging
to basically
correct. So I mean, these things are very important, and these are very right questions. I think please ask questions, and I'm sure Silva will answer all of your questions, and you should go as deep as possible. Yeah, thanks, Silva.
Thanks. So Wajid, thanks, a big thanks to you as well for asking these questions. So these are the fundamental questions one needs to actually know about as to how this is actually progressing. Okay, the whole ecosystem is actually building. Okay. So Praveen, can we have a 10 minutes break, please?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So guys, it's 7:16 now. Should we? We'll just take 10 minutes quick break, and then we'll start at 7:26.
7:25, 26.
Yeah, 26. Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
So an interesting question that has come from Arvind Reddy while we are waiting. Polkadot have more than one chain. I mean, absolutely. But then why one Polkadot currency? That's a very good question, Arvind. So what happens in typical blockchains? That look at Ethereum, for example, right? Ethereum has got one token which is called Ether, and all transactions that really happen. So there are business use cases for Ether. Whatever, say for example, you pay to the validators, okay, node validators, transaction validators, you pay them in ETH, okay. And similar to that, so what happens? That kind of one consolidated currency basically brings the cohesiveness in the whole ecosystem, right? And that's how valuable is an ecosystem that will be decided by what all activities are happening in that particular network, right? So similar to that, Polkadot has got its own token called DOT, and this DOT token summarizes the various activities which are being done by various networks which really operate in this overall Polkadot ecosystem. So that's how I think. But then if you look at Ether, for example, Ethereum, then all the dApps or distributed applications, when they kind of get created on the platform, they might have their own currency. Now those currencies which will be basically those currencies will be defining the business functions within that particular application. Okay, now there may be the validators are common. If you really see like that, so Ethereum has right now, I mean, it moves to the proof of stake, or any other chain for that matter who are working on proof of stake model. There, these validators, they have to stake their money. And once they stake their money, then they have skin in the game, and if they behave badly, then they will face penalty. All these things which are happening at that level typically happens through the protocol, or I would say the blockchain level token or currency there, right? But then you are always, and most of the applications, right, they have there, for example, there are several types of currencies. I think I would encourage you to go and read through several stuff, such as there are currencies which are tokens which kind of may not have economic value. They could just be inside the application, such as there are gaming applications, right? They have their own tokens which have value. Now you can go and acquire those tokens by several methods, such as playing the game and performing good, you get rewarded, or maybe sometimes you can use those to buy the NFTs in the game. There are several things that can happen. Or there are stable coin currencies, for example, like USDC, DAI, all those. So there are different types of currency. So I think I would encourage that you go and read through. But coming back to your point, basically a token or currency at the ecosystem level definitely, in my opinion, consolidates the whole ecosystem. And how much valuable is the ecosystem, how much value you are creating, that kind of gets decided by that particular token. Question is from Ritesh. The different chains in Polkadot are public chains or private chains. That's interesting thing. So you could have any, and that's the beauty. I think one of the problems which blockchain has been facing is about interoperability. And if you go and look at private chains or public chains, if you need them to connect to each other, okay, now that interoperability is a big challenge, because what happens that both of these, are having their own mechanisms, like Selva was explaining earlier, and it becomes very difficult to go and interact, because you have got your own money in one particular chain, and that money has got its own ecosystem, right? Now, if that money has to go to some other chain in connection, how would you do that? Now that's and what value will it have in the chain? So that is the biggest problem that this industry is facing right now. And some of these efforts that we're talking about today, they are kind of leap forward step in that direction, right? There are typical solutions right now which are available, such as you can establish a bridge between these two chains, and these bridges basically help you take currency or token from one chain to another chain. And what happens really in that process, that you kind of lock the original token in the main chain, and then you kind of create equivalent token, representative token in the destination chain, and that token kind of has value, and that token kind of rotates in the new chain. And whenever you really want to get your own money back, you come back and then you kind of go and withdraw, and the new tokens will be burned, and you will be given back your the original token. So I think there are very complex methods of doing all these things, achieving all these things right now. And all these efforts which are happening right now, such as Polkadot, Cosmos, even Polygon has come up with their edge, where all these chains have given you an ability to create your own network, which are very, very specific to you. You don't really need to be abiding by the principles of the blockchain, and that's the freedom I think I'm talking about here.
Yeah, Ritesh, can you hear me?
Yes, Silva, we can hear you.
Yeah. So, Ritesh, you are asking the different chains, Polkadot or public chains or private chains. They can be any. They can be any. There is no restriction on that.
Yeah, Silva, I have addressed those questions. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, shall we resume?
Yes. Yes, Silva, we can resume.
Yeah. So we have seen the 4 class updates. Upgrades. Okay. Now, one of the other important aspect of the whole Polkadot ecosystem is the transparent governance, which would mean that essentially all the governance related issues are all carried out in a democratic fashion by the participating parties or the stakeholders. Okay, so in the early blockchains, there would be one organization which is responsible for everything, right? And the stakeholders, that is the users of the blockchain, did not have much of a say in how the project should actually proceed as time goes by. But in case of Polkadot, it is all completely community powered. Okay, so anyone who owns the DOT tokens, they can participate. So DOT is the Polkadot's native currency or the native token, as you might say. Okay, so everybody who owns DOTs, they will have a say in the governance of the entire network. And then comes the cross-chain composability. Okay, this will allow essentially for the various parachains and the networks that are actually connected to the Polkadot's relay chain. They'll be able to communicate. Okay, and they can also exchange values. They can also share functionality, and so it allows you to do a great deal of things by way of collaboration. Okay. So there's a possibility that there is some kind of functionality available in one blockchain which can be utilized by other blockchain instead of reinventing the wheel. So these sort of innovations, okay, will come as time goes by in the Polkadot network. If we look at the Polkadot architecture, this is taken from their light paper. So essentially, what you see in the center is the relay chain. Okay. And these different, flower-like structures, these are all called as the parachains. And these blocks, square blocks that you see, these are the bridges. Okay, so essentially, these are the essential elements of the Polkadot network. So you have the relay chain, you have parachains, and you have the bridges. So majorly, these are the 3, components to the entire Polkadot network itself. Right now, if you look at it, so we'll see what are the different parts of it. So one is the relay chain. Now, the relay chain is the heart of the entire Polkadot ecosystem. In fact, they have designed it in such a fashion that you can even expand it in such a fashion that you can have one, relay chain. You can have another relay chain created, and thereby you can actually scale this whole thing up into a very huge network. So you can actually create what they call it as an internet of blockchains. So even the relay chain is actually scalable. So you can actually create more number of relay chains and connect these relay chains together through bridges, and that will allow you to build a huge ecosystem of all the blockchains involved in this. Right. So that's the heart. So essentially what this relay chain does, it provides network security, consensus, and cross-chain interoperability, which would mean that if I'm actually a blockchain developer, I want to build my own blockchain, I need not worry about the network security because this is provided by out of the box from the relay chain itself. I need not build my own consensus, even though everything is actually customizable. So if whatever relay chain provides in terms of the network security, the interoperability, and I can only concentrate upon the application domain for which I'm actually building my blockchain. So you're essentially building these so-called blockchains or parachains, as we see, okay, without having to worry about these common cross-cutting concerns like the network security, the consensus, and the interoperability. Okay. So these are taken care of by the relay chain itself. So you can use the relay chain's functionality and just concentrate on what you want to do. So then comes the parachain. So if you see all these, small blocks which are actually connected to the relay chain, these are called as the parachains, which are nothing but blockchains. Okay, they are separate blockchains which you develop. In fact, that's what we are going to say in the next session, wherein we will develop our own blockchain. Okay, we call these as parachains connected to the relay chain. Okay. So you can have a blockchain which has its own native token. Okay, and you can customize this blockchain for whatever application that you intend to build in. And then finally, what you do is you simply connect to the relay chain. And what happens is in this relay chain, if you see, these are some square blocks in there. Okay, these are called as parachain slots. So you connect through these slots, and when you connect to the relay chain, your parachain to the relay chain. Okay, so you need to own. You can pay in the form of dot tokens on either a lease basis. So these are called as parachain slots, which can be leased. I think, Sanjay, if I'm right, Praveen, if I'm right, I think probably it is 92 weeks, lease period, right? 92 or 96?
I'll have to check that.
Yeah, so I think it is either 92 or 90. So you can actually lease it for a period of 92 or 96 weeks, one slot, and then you can connect your parachain to that slot. Or you can also use a pay-as-you-go model, okay, for continuous connectivity. So these are two ways in which your parachains connect to the relay chain through these slots. Then you have the other part, these square blocks that you see here, okay. I hope you are able to see my mouse cursor, right?
Yes, we can see, Selva. Yeah.
Right. So these are called as the bridges. So bridges, okay, allow the proprietary networks to connect to these parachains, okay, and finally to the relay chain, and allow these, networks to talk to each other. I think I have a message. So what about artificial intelligence, machine learning, how they are related to blockchain? Well, so if you look at artificial intelligence, machine learning, this is used. This can be used as an ad hoc application on top of the blockchain itself. So you could build something of that sort. Like for instance, you might have you might come up with a security module that actually uses machine learning to scan through the network looking for malicious activity or something like that. So the applications are limitless, right? So Praveen, would you like to add some?
No, I think very well answered. So look, so basically all these technologies are, I think together they solve the overall objective. If you look at, say, for example, blockchain, like Selva mentioned, all these data storage has been distributed, right? So you kind of go and that's the biggest value of decentralized system, DLTs, right? But then there are, of course, associated risks are there, so which you solve by using the right consensus mechanism so that people do not cheat, people do not break the system. At the same time, in the whole process, basically the data collection is immense. Now, unless the AI and ML technique comes into this whole equation, you will not be able to derive intelligence from this data. So AI ML
Exactly.
becomes relevant. Similar to that, if you look at IoT devices, now unless you have got IoT devices, and I'll give you an example, and I was giving this example in some other talk of mine, where say for example you are talking about an agriculture system. Now in the agriculture system, what happens that you have got several of the devices which are connected to which have IoT sensors, and then they kind of send the data to the blockchain. Now you can handle it through various means, but unless you have the IoT connectivity here, the data cannot reach blockchain. So I think all of these technologies, in my opinion, play a significant role together in solving a bigger business problem that we all are trying to, right? I mean, we cannot say that AI ML is important or not. I mean, they definitely have sense. For example, I'll give you a very straight example. Now, huge amount of data is being collected in this process, and unless you have the right AI ML techniques, you cannot really go and find out whether some bad things are happening. How do you get the right intelligence for that? I mean, that decides the future. So I think it really is a very, very, I would say, integrated world in terms of technology. Selva, if that makes sense.
Right, right. So, say for instance, today banks are using AI/ML for fraud detection. So this could be used within the blockchain infrastructure in order to see if any fraudulent activity is going on in terms of invalid transactions being recorded or anything of that sort. So the possibilities are limitless. So these are all complementary technology which will bring together to solve a bigger, much bigger problem for whatever domain that you can think of. Does that answer your question, Bharat? Okay, so we'll go ahead. Yeah. You're welcome, Bharat. So bridges allow the proprietary networks like Bitcoin or Ethereum to basically connect to these the Polkadot relay chain by way of directions, right? Okay. Now, when it comes to consensus, is one of the core tenets of it's really the bedrock of the entire blockchain itself, the consensus. That is, what does consensus really mean? So look at it from a very simple what to say example. Now if you go to a bank, okay, earlier there used to be manual systems wherein when you do a transaction, it would be recorded in a book of transactions. So that's what we call it as ledger. Now it has become DLT, that is distributed ledger technology. So essentially what is happening is that, suppose if I make a transaction, let's say I deposit 10 rupees. Okay. Now there are 10 people in the room who are recording this transaction. Okay. That 10 rupees has been deposited by Silverage Venture's account, like that. Okay. Now, ultimately, the account is updated when all the people who are actually recording the transaction, let's say the 10 people I was talking about who are actually recording it, they will perform a sanity check and validity check. And if they all agree, then finally my account balance gets updated, right? So that is what consensus is all about. So basically you're agreeing to the validity of the transaction having taken place. Like for instance, so let's say, within this consensus mechanism, it's actually in fact an entire talk in itself. So, but I'll give you a brief of this. Now, for instance, out of these 10 people, I have one close friend of mine. What I do is I'm actually depositing 10 rupees, but what he records in his ledger is that Selva has actually deposited 50 rupees, right? So he is actually doing a fraudulent activity on my behalf, okay, by recording a transaction which is actually invalid. So what happens is, when you look at consensus, 9 people say I deposited 10 rupees. The other person is saying that I deposited 50 rupees. So what will happen is that consensus, what will happen is the majority wins, and then this transaction will be recorded as a fraudulent transaction. And maybe that node might even be, kicked out of the network itself. Okay. So this is what consensus is all about. So how is the consensus actually achieved? And that is where, okay, you have the validators and the collators. So these, dots that you see here on the right side of the parachain are the collators. So basically, whatever is happening within the parachain, okay, all those transactions are collected, okay, and the proof of validations are provided by these collators to the validators. So first, all the transactions are recorded, okay, and they're all collected by these collators. Once a block has reached a size, then what happens is that block containing transactions and proof of the validations, that will be provided to the validators to finally do the actual validation. Okay. So what these validators do, they will take these transactions, they will actually validate the proofs from the collators, and they will also participate in consensus so that you need to have a majority of these validators agreeing that, okay, this block can be finalized. That is, everything looks okay. The transactions are valid. The proof has been validated against. And so once that happens, okay, the validators will come to consensus. Okay, and then finally the block will be persisted. Okay, within the relation. So apart from that, in the consensus, you also have nominators. Okay, so these nominators basically secure the relation by selecting trustworthy validators. So essentially, these nominators are nothing but kind of sort of security guys who are looking at the validators and ensuring that the validators actually do their job properly. Okay, so whether the validator is trustworthy or not. So that's what these nominators do, and this role they can achieve only by staking dot tokens. Okay, so nominators stake dot tokens in order to achieve that role of a nominator to essentially say vote on who is a valid validator or a trustworthy validator and who is not. Okay. And then the other side of the equation is the fishermen. So basically, these are the ones who monitor the network and they report any kind of bad behavior to the validators and collectors. Okay, and any parachain full node can perform a fisherman role. Again, what tokens have to be staked in order to be a fisherman. So essentially, these are the nodes which are looking for any invalid or inappropriate behavior within the network. And for developers, you have the docs in there, and there are Rust docs. So we will be using Substrate framework in the next session. So some amount of if you look into the Rust docs. So these are all the Rust docs in here. So you can actually look into this. And some basic Rust programming should be good enough. Okay. And also you have this the Rococo network, okay, which is where you can deploy your parachains for testing. That's Rococo. Okay. Again, it has got its own runs on Rockmint. Okay. And you can use this. So they show how you can actually build this. Okay. So for testing your parachain on this Rococo network, you will have to use this Rococo faucet, which is on the Matrix channel. You can use that and get some free Rococo tokens, and which you can use it for deploying on the Rococo network. Okay.
So Silva, so one thing I want to add here, basically.
Yeah.
So now Silva will cover several things with respect to Substrate and other, programming requirements, in the future sessions. One more thing is that we will have one session directly from Polkadot as well, in which you could go and much deeper into the development environment setups. So we will be sharing with you the link of that. But to come back to now, what Silva was talking about is that Substrate is something which gives you an ability to create your blockchain in the shortest amount of time. Now, how does that happen? Yeah. So now, how does that happen? Say, for example, like what all do you need in a blockchain? You need, what all does happen in a blockchain network? So you need to have your node publication mechanism, node proposal, node validation, and then you have got transaction validation. Then you have got some consensus mechanism that we talk about. Right? There are several components really which are required for to function for a blockchain network to be up and running. Now, what happens that if you are creating a blockchain, from scratch, then you will have to go and do everything yourself.
Yes.
And and what
essentially you'll be reinventing the wheel.
Yeah, you will be reinventing the wheel. But here, what Polkadot has done, Polkadot is saying, okay, you want consensus, pick this. They call it pallets, basically.
Pallets.
These are components, right? So you just go and pick up 5 things which are required for you, and you say, okay, fine, include these things in the runtime, and then your blockchain is up. That is as simple. Now, does it solve your purpose? Many times. And does it not solve your purpose? Many times. So basically, but they give you freedom to go and modify the code in those palettes to suit to your requirements. You can also create your own palette. I mean, all these possibilities are there. But I was watching a video from Gavin Wood sometime, maybe he was giving some session somewhere, maybe it was a few years back, where he boots up a network by using these palettes in minutes. I mean, that's the thing that you're talking about. You could always do that. So I think,
in fact,
guys,
that's what I'm going to demonstrate in the next session.
Absolutely. And so why I'm emphasizing on this point that, look, you could take some time to become an expert in Polkadot and and Substrate, but it does not take a lot of time for you to stand up and running. I mean, start running basically. That is what will be the objective from Silva's next sessions, and you definitely should take a look at that. And one thing I can tell you, like interoperability, which Silva talked about, and which all of you appreciate, that this is going to be one of the biggest areas in which blockchain work will happen in next few years. So it is always very important to understand these techniques and technologies so that you are ready for the market, right? Or you are ready for the interesting work and challenge. Silva, if you agree with me.
Yeah. So actually, the truth is, this is still in a nascent stage. So this is the right time to hop onto this bandwagon. You'll sell like hotcake in the market tomorrow in the blockchain domain. So there is a lot of scope as far as career building is also concerned. Okay. So this is, and the future is going to be data, and future is going to be blockchain. That's for sure. There is no doubt about that at all. So this is a technology platform that allows you to get an entry into the blockchain domain. Okay. Now the important thing is we start off as Pankaj mentioned in the beginning of the session, a top-down approach. So we start with the substrate and then tell you how these things are actually fitting together, and then you can start your own blockchain. First you play around with that. And then when you want to customize stuff according to your needs or your own, implement your own ideas, then read upon the Rust programming, and then use that in your code and so on and so forth. So think of it like Lego blocks. Okay, so these are Lego blocks, and now you know how to connect them together to build different shapes. That's what Substrate actually brings to the table. If I'm right, Praveen?
And that is absolutely, and that is the beauty of this world. I think if you really see, if you really see the DeFi application. So I'll tell you a little bit about that. So what happens if, for example, you create an application in DeFi, and this is pure open source. People take your solution and they start building on top of that. Okay, then somebody else creates something on top of this, and then somebody else comes and he or she builds on top of that. So that's the composability that Silva talked about, and that is what, and the beauty is that all of these things are open source. Now there is most of them basically, right? So what happens that, and that is what is the way in which, and that is the reason for this industry to flourish, because I think nobody is keeping the assets whole. Why did Linux become so big? Open source, right? Why did Java become? So the point what I'm saying that open source, and people just take the solutions and you create something of your own. And I think nothing like it in my opinion.
Yes. So essentially, iteratively, the technology is progressing the way it is supposed to. So if everything becomes proprietary, every new solution has to be done right from scratch. So open source gives you a platform where you already have something built. Now you customize it to your needs, build something new. The other person does something else, and so iteratively it grows. So that's the beauty of the whole open source ecosystem.
Well, thank you so much. I think we are around the time, Silva sir. I think thank you for your eye-opening session, and I'm pretty sure that people who attended today's session, they would have understood the foundational concepts today, which will be the building block for the next two sessions. Yes. And I think we look forward. So please, guys, do attend the sessions, because I think one of the things that IBC Media is trying to do is to take this technology to all of you, okay, so that you could be a part of this community, this thriving blockchain development community. And that's what is our effort, nothing else. So please, get benefited from what we are doing, what Selva is trying to tell you, and start developing.
It's going to be very interesting from the next session onwards. So today it was overview and theoretical thing, but practically how you build blockchain and then deploy it and then run it and see things going on in there.
Yeah,
that's going to be the real interesting part, which you'll get.
Yes, yes. So, and I would like to thank all of you participants for joining in and listening to us. And we look forward to having you again in the next session, which is on Wednesday, the same time, 6 p.m. IST. And until then, my suggestion and recommendation will be that Selva showed you several websites and several portals. Please spend time on them and try to understand the nitty-gritties, which will help you appreciate the next sessions even better.
Exactly. So if you do a little bit of homework from your side, you don't have to get too technical also, but the terminology and things like that, if you're aware of it, it'll make the learning will be even more interesting.
Absolutely. There is a question from Vishwas. Vishwas, will there be a session around robonomics? So Vishwas, so robonomics is an application built on top of Polkadot.
Yes.
So whatever you are learning here, basically that will be pretty much applicable to robonomics also. They have got their own business use case, but then if you really kind of come and learn what we are kind of exposing you to, that will help you there as well.
In fact, you will get to a stage where you could build your own blockchain with close to what robonomics networks does.
Absolutely. Maybe you
That's
could
the beauty
create
of this.
and you could create something like Vishwas, nomics. I think we all look forward to that, Vishwas.
And having features which are not provided by robonomics.
Absolutely. So I think these things are always possible, and that is what is the beauty of this field. I mean, this gives you enormous amount of autonomy, freedom. Your innovation has no limits, but just understand the basics, fundamentals, and then you are ready to fly. I mean, that's how it should be.
So thanks all of you for spending time with me. Thanks a lot, and I hope to see you in the next session on Wednesday, wherein we'll start building our own blockchain. Thanks a lot, guys. Thanks for your patience.
Thank you, Selva. Thank you all.
Thank you. Bye bye.